So much. You know, when I thought about the series that we are on, Engineered Endings, I just wanted to start with just a brief, like an interlude, if you'd like,
Yeah.
or preface to this message. That if you look at the story of Elijah, when we talk about engineered endings, um, people, it's so hard or it's so mystical to understand how God operates. It's sort of a mystery. It's sort of a mystery. But I want to tell you something. God engineers endings. God engineers destinies. People program things. We program computers to do certain things. And when people say I'm designing a system, our design is it's almost as if it's one dimensional. You want to achieve a certain ending and then you set it up to achieve what it's supposed to achieve. But God engineers endings through people, and people are very complex creatures to say I've designed a person. It's not like a robot. A robot, you can go straight to its program and understand what it is supposed to do, and any computer program you can understand it. But when God says I'm going to raise up a man, or I'm going to do this in this land, you'd just think you would be so one trick minded and just go for that particular ending. But
Yeah.
He's a God who's dealing with people, and people have got a choice. But God shows His power in that He works through those people that have got choices and still accomplishes His will. And that's the mystery that you even see in our world politics. What God is doing is engineering a certain ending, and that ending is the kingdom of the Messiah upon this earth. And you might see all the confusion, you might see the devil reigning and doing all sorts of things in the hearts of men. But God is so superior that He had seen all those things, but He's going to get His way. He's going to achieve it. I like the word that came, I think, when even President Donald Trump lost the election, that people were looking at him and were saying, we are going to achieve this ending through this man. They could just see no other way of things happening. But God said, no, I'm actually not even intimidated by doing it without him. And,
Ex-
and God set him aside. And God set him aside and allowed another man to come in. But I want you to know that God will have it His way. Is still engineering His ending, and He will still achieve it. So you will find that in the story of Elijah that I just spoke about, God told Elijah to go to a widow, and He said, I have commanded that widow to feed you. That story just touches me because when God said He had commanded that widow to feed Elijah, when he gets to the widow is defeated. She has got no clue whatsoever. God said He had spoken to her. And it's the same thing in life when we are dealing with engineered endings. You might think that when God says, I have actually, I have put a destiny before you and it's going to happen. And the people that are around you right now are the people that are going to make it. You think they know it. They probably don't. They have got no idea that there is a particular ending that's being engineered by the Lord. Hallelujah. So when Elijah gets to the woman is actually defeated. She's saying, I have got only one meal that's left for me and my sons. And that's all we're going to have, and we're going to die. She probably had no clue. And if you tell her that God had told you that you were going to feed Elijah, she would have probably said, feed Elijah, I can't even feed myself. I can't even feed myself. But God said He had spoken to her. So this is the question I always ask people. Would you know it if God had spoken to you? You probably wouldn't. Or do you know the things that God has spoken to you? You probably don't. The best illustration of some of these things is when you speak in tongues. When you speak in tongues, there are things that you say, but you don't even know what you're saying. But the question is, do you know what you have said, and do you have what you have said? That's one of the primary questions that I can ask you, because you've already said something. I mean, it came from you. It came from your spirit. Who spoke? It was you. It wasn't the Holy Spirit who was speaking. It was you. It was your spirit. You said something. So you've got something, but you don't know what you said. Reminds me of King Nebuchadnezzar. He had a dream. He knew he had dreamed something, but he didn't know what it was. But he had it. Hallelujah. So you having something and you knowing that you have it can be two separate things. And they often are when it comes to God. So this business of people saying, I need God to speak to me. can actually be very carnal. What you actually need to do is to understand what God has spoken. You need to spend time with God until you can understand what He has spoken to you about. And so many times we are defeated because we have not translated what's in the Spirit. It was so fortunate for this lady because the person who was sent to her was a prophet. So he told her, based on the word that God has spoken, he could discern that there is provision in this house. And he didn't bow down to the same defeat that she had of just looking at what was in that house. He then said, okay, what is it that you have? He looked at what she had and he said, and the miracle was commanded and it began to happen because that cruise was not going to run out until that drought because God had spoken to her. So I want you to know this thing, that when we talk of engineered endings, we are talking about a complex operation of God in the Spirit, whereby He brings things to pass by His own counsel. And it's when we realize that God is so infinite that when He says He has commanded someone to do something, that person might not even know it. I'll tell you a personal testimony. Pastor D, I'm sure he once spoke something, I think, when we were in one of the services in Joburg, before we shut down that place, before the lockdowns. He said, I can see you are in a door, in a two-way door system, like a bank, where you open one door and you enter into a certain place, and then once that one closes, you then allowed to open the next one. So I'm in some kind of a situation that's like that. So that word was very accurate. But I want you to know something. When God made a way for me, it was so supernatural. The place where I'm working right now, it was so supernatural. I mean, I'll give you the details some other day, but it was so supernatural. It was like the day before, God said, I have made a way, I have made an opening of a certain job. So many people here, Mama Chuma, try to help me to get a job. But God said, I have made a way, and this one, you will see it. And it was like the next day, someone called me asking me about a job, and I knew that was it. And it was like I was almost tempted to tell my employer that this is engineered of God. I'm here because God spoke and so on. But the guy couldn't understand me. He was seeing so many challenges and so on. I never told him anything eventually because I just said, no, let me reserve this one. Probably we'll talk about. But I was telling him my faith about how it's going to work and so on. And the next experience, I think it didn't take like 2 or 3 months, I think. The guy was on my case. The guy was so angry with me. I think you can talk to my wife, she can tell you another day. Things were just conspiring against me. And I was wondering, how could this be a miracle from God? And this guy is now so mean to me. I haven't even done anything. He's making a case out of nothing. And I actually had to pray. I prayed my heart out, wondering where this is going. I was actually about to quit. I was like, you know what, Lord, the real issue is I must get that other door opened. Why should I wait here and be abused like this? Can we just not walk into that door and start working on the actual issue? Because this is just temporary after all. Then the Lord said, no, this person is the one that I have actually commanded to help you. They shall help you to get that door open. Don't even worry about all that is happening. Actually, there's actually better things that are actually coming. You'll be all right. And from that point, I just, I just quit. I surrendered. I just left it to the Lord. The situation didn't change. It was still bad. It kept on until later on. It actually even got worse. I will not even give you the details, but I actually went for like a month or so without a salary. Things were just getting worse and worse. But things that have happened afterwards, I mean, we are now like so good friends with my boss. It's amazing. I have never even tried to make myself appear like a good person to him. I've just been doing my job and so on. But he likes me a lot. We are talking about other things, and I can now start to see things that are happening which I never thought would have happened. And I can realize that God put something in the man, and the man doesn't even know it. But the man is going to do it, but he doesn't know it. But he's going to do it because God spoke to him. This is why God always said the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, and he turns it wheresoever he wills. Because God engineers things. So you might look at a person, they might not even be a believer, or they might not be in your fellowship circles, but God, if God has spoken to them to do something, whether they know it or not, what God has spoken about will happen. So I want you to focus on the Lord when we talk about engineered endings. Now I'm going to turn to something that's I'm not turning to my sermon. So I'm just going to, my sermon is going to be in 3 parts. So the first part, I'm going to talk about priesthood. So priesthood is very, very important when we talk about engineered endings. Actually, this is where we start. This is the beginning of all things. The second part, I'll talk about associations that define destiny, or destiny defining associations. The last part, I'll talk about just general associations and their role in our lives. But I'll start with priesthood. You know, I came across this revelation this week. You know, when I was looking at life and what we need to succeed, I was actually dealing with spiritual warfare. That's what I was dealing with. And I was praying about this message on associations, on relationships. What is it that we need? How do we need to master relationships? You know, it's if I talk about relationships right now, people, the first thing that people have got a lot of knowledge, Pastor D. People have got you know, there are so many, what do you call this? Motivational speakers. Most motivational speakers have mastered some of the secrets that are in the kingdom, and they've just removed God out of it. So unfortunately, when you remove God, there are certain cogs that cannot stand without you having to openly admit that there is actually an intervention of God. And that is why some of the things, they can work and they can help people and so on. So when you say relationships, there are people right now, if you were to poke anyone, they'll tell you about how social capital is important, you know, relationships get things done and so on. But I want to tell you something. The first relationship that you have got to get with physical people is a relationship with the priesthood, is an association with the priesthood. This is where things begin to flow. You can make all the other things tend, but without a relationship with the priesthood, I can assure you, your things will be very, very difficult. You know, I've seen worldly people understand the role of a priesthood. There's no mystery to why in your rural area people can say, let's go, let's go to consult. What they are telling you, or the equivalence of what they are talking about there, is a form of a priesthood. It's a darkness priesthood. It's something that we don't approve. But what they are talking about is they understand that there is a spiritual reality that we have got to address, that we have got to get in order before we can attack a particular problem. Zimbabwean businessmen are very shrewd. South African businessmen, I can assure you, Sangomas are big business in South Africa because they understand what a priesthood is in the spirit. They just don't understand the light, and they don't want to submit to the light. But they understand that the first relationship that you've got to align is a priesthood. I'll take you to the children of Israel when they crossed the Jordan with Joshua. Under Joshua, that's Joshua. You read that story from Joshua 1 up to chapter 7. Joshua chapter 1, from chapter 1 up to chapter 7. When they crossed the Jordan, one of the things that God told them was, follow the ark. Follow the ark. You remember those provisions that God was telling them. He said, follow the ark. So the ark was going to be borne by the priests. And the priests, when their feet would set on the waters of the Jordan, the waters would dry up. But God told them, follow the ark. When he was telling them, follow the ark, he was telling them, follow a priesthood that carries the ark. The priesthood, the ark is going to be borne by a priesthood. There is going to be priests that are going to be carrying the ark. The ark is just not going to stand on its own, and you just going to be following. There is going to be a man of God that will be raised. There will be a woman of God that will be raised, that will be carrying the presence. And you, when you are seeking the presence genuine, you will see that this priesthood carries the ark, and you will follow that. You can't stick, I like what Benny Hinn said, you can't stick a live branch on a dry tree. You cannot follow a priesthood that does not carry the presence and expect to get results. So you need an ark, you need a priesthood that is actually carrying the presence of God for you to actually enter into Canaan and start to have conquest and to have victories. So God said, follow the ark. These are spiritual principles. Even them to come out of Egypt, it took a man. You know, these days we are smart people. The smartness isn't exactly the worldly one. The worldly people, they will consult. They will get a ganga there. They will get a sangoma there. You know, they are very smart because spiritually they know what it's like. But in the church, we now have a new form of smartness. And this smartness is like, you know, we are all the same before God. You know, we can all approach the presence of God and so on. And to an extent, those things are true. But what they are telling you is, I don't have to submit to any priesthood. I don't have to submit to any man of God. It's not like that. There is order in the things of God. There are things, there are places that you cannot break. There are altars that you cannot conquer as long as you don't have a priesthood that is going to stand with you, or you are not in a relationship with a particular priesthood. There are business ideas that might be so wonderful, but they will not be able to stand because there is no relationship with any priesthood. You will pray, and you know people that have prayed. You know people that are barren that have prayed. But because there is no relationship with any priesthood, they are just not finding the victory that they should find. This is the reason God didn't say, everyone in Israel, just jump into the Jordan. I am with you. The waters will part. You will never drown. He said, follow the ark. Let the ark go first. And the ark was borne by the priest. There was order. That was the first part. The second part, remember, the first challenge that Israel had to face was Jericho. That was the first challenge that they faced. God made them cross right at a place where Jericho was. They could have crossed any other place, but God made them cross, and the first place that they faced was Jericho. And Jericho was highly fortified. You know what God said? God said the priests are going to go around Jericho for 7 days, and they'll be blowing their trumpets. You know, when trumpets are spoken of, you know what we're talking about. When trumpets are blown, the voice of God is spoken of in scripture as the blowing of the trumpets. So when you see trumpets in scripture, remember you're talking about the voice of the Lord. So the voice of the Lord was going to speak around Jericho. But how was the voice of the Lord going to speak? The trumpets were going to be blown by the priests. By the priests. It was the priest who was going to blow the trumpets. So the voice of God released by the priests was what was needed. You cannot just go into Jericho. I am with you. But the priest has to go ahead, and they have to speak the word of God and keep speaking it and speaking it and speaking it and speaking it. And when they speak on the seventh day, they did it 7 times. When they did it 7 times, the people were commanded to shout, and the walls fell flat. There are walls that only a priesthood that carries the presence, when they release the word of God, those walls will fall down. And that's only when you can jump in and start to get the victory. That's only when you can jump in and start to get the victory. This is amazing. This is amazing. I'm telling you, a priesthood, a relationship with a man of God, that is not optional. That is not optional. And that's not something that we can trivialize. This is the reason why men of God will clothe them with miracle signs and wonders, so that you can notice that they carry the ark. Why? Because there are victories that you cannot get in life unless God releases them through them. I had a friend of mine. He was interceding for this family. That friend of mine is a man of God. But he's got, like I can say, he's not an easy person to get along with. So the people that he was trying to help, was they were trying to conceive, they kind of took issue with his character. They were more concerned with the issues around his character than they were getting a solution to their problems. And that became a hindrance to a point where I just slowly descend in my heart that God has already given the breakthrough for this couple. But the problem is the breakthrough is in that man of God. And they will do whatever they will do, but they will not get that breakthrough because it's in this particular person. And I asked the person, and he said, I know it. God already gave this to me. And I tried to talk to the couple, and the couple were like, look at what he's like, and so on. And, we all, everyone, no, the man of God didn't even say, I don't want to give them the breakthrough. He was still praying, but they just could not receive the vessel. And they did without, and they're still doing it without. I'm telling you, the closest they've come is a terrible miscarriage. They had a miscarriage. The pregnancy was so advanced, but they had a miscarriage. But what they will need, maybe God might raise another person. I'm not stopping God. But what they will need is a priesthood that is carrying the ark that they are going to submit to, and that victory will start. That victory will start. I'm telling you, if you've been fighting even altars in your family, if you've been fighting things in your family and those things are not going down, I am telling you, you need a man of God to start releasing the voice of God. You can pray, I know, and you must keep on praying, but I need you to have a relationship with a man of God that will speak things in your life. Now, when I talk about priesthood, I'm not talking about, because priesthood, I'll explain some things about priesthood and what it symbolizes, even in the spirit. Now, it's not just about your victories. Priesthood, what it does, priesthood releases things. It releases destinies. So a priest will go and anoint a king. A priest will go, the prophet, even the prophet, they will anoint kings and all those things. And they will even anoint other priests. So what that is doing is, a priesthood is more like what you can call it a motherly calling, or they can be in the spirit, they are actually gates. What do I mean by gates? By gates, I mean they release people into certain things. They put people into certain places. Just like a woman, I like this revelation that I saw from this minister, was saying women don't understand what they mean in the spirit, or why women are probably the most, it's as if women are the most attacked people in earth. That's why women are so, churches are filled with women. The devil hates a woman because a woman is a gate for people, for men to come into the earth. Because a man first comes in the womb of a woman. She incubates, she keeps that man, and that man becomes fully grown 9 months, and then they are born. So what the devil will start to do, or will try to do, is he will try to destroy the woman. That's what he realized. That's why he is so much against women, because he realized that women are the gateway. The devil hates men. So it's very natural that what he will try to do is to destroy the gate by which they enter. Priests serve the similar function or similar role, men of God, that they serve the similar function. If God wants to raise people, whether in business or in art, God will use a man of God to mold that person and to make them mature and get to a certain stage where they can handle the fights that are in the particular area that they want to enter, and they are now ready to go into that particular area. So men of God, they are gates, they are points of entry, they are people that they release people into their destinies. When we talk about engineering outcomes, so God uses them for that very purpose. That's why they will say, I'm a father, or I'm a mother, all those things. It's actually true. Many people have tried to fight this issue of spiritual fathers and so on, but it's actually true. People are actually born out of people. Spiritually speaking, people are actually born. Destinies are actually created. Kings are actually created. King Pharaoh had his own wise men that were, who's this? Nebuchadnezzar had his wise men that were around him, because they come from other men that then release them into their destiny. That's why in Israel, the king had to have a prophet around him. Or kings were basically raised by prophets. Kings were basically raised by prophets. I'll tell you something about, I just thought about when I'm talking about this thing of kings being raised by prophets. You remember Eli the prophet, the priest. So Eli, you know what he was? Most people, we look at the story and then we see that war yakaitika, and the ark was carried off into the land of the Philistines. And then we say that is when the glory had departed. No, that is when Israel knew that the glory had departed. The glory had departed long back. The glory had departed when the house of Eli became corrupt. So there was a corrupt priesthood. There was a corrupt priesthood. This is why you cannot just follow any priesthood. You've got to follow the one that carries the ark. Eli's priesthood did not carry the ark. They no longer had the presence of God. His sons were wicked. His sons were busy abusing the sacrifices. And to demonstrate to it, the first thing that God did in trying to find a solution to this problem, he shut up the womb of Hannah. He shut up a womb. She would come back, she would try to pray. God had shut her up. Why? Because God was trying to get someone to receive a person that would start the restoration of the priesthood. God was trying to get someone because there was no priesthood. These people were now walking in virtual defeat. Israel was an accident waiting to happen. Why? Because the first gate had already been broken. There was no priesthood. There was no priesthood in the house of Israel. And God was now trying to begin the process of restoration. Let me tell you something. You know what Israel did when they realized that they were now losing? They carried the ark into the war. I have never seen that anyway. I have never seen that. It was a gimmick that was just surprising for me. They carried the ark because they thought, no, the ark must carry the victory. We've heard stories, but the issue was the people that carried that ark were not priests. They were a corrupt priesthood. This is one thing that people then don't discern. People will go to a corrupt priesthood and just try to get victories because you know what people do even at funerals? They'll just say, who is a priest here? And they'll try to, a priest, let the priest pray for us. You can't do that with your victories. You can't do that with your destinies. Not any priest can do it for you. A corrupt priesthood can't do it for you. A priesthood that doesn't pray can't do it for you. You need a priesthood that is connected to the presence of God. You need a priesthood. So this is what I ask people. If it's just the ark, or if God is everywhere, as people want to say it, why is it that when you call the presence of God, things don't happen? Why is it that we have to wait for a particular priesthood? Why is it the ark was captured when there were people who were called priests, but the ark was captured? The ark was there, but Israel lost. The ark was even captured because there was a corrupt priesthood. I'm telling you, you cannot just say, why are we losing? Many people will ask, why are we losing when God is with us? Isn't God with us all the time? Isn't God the priesthood? What's happening to the priesthood? Can we pray for God to restore the priesthood? Can we stay in connection with the priesthood that is actually carrying the presence of God? It's not just about having a Bible. You'll be defeated while holding a Bible. It's not just about words. You'll be defeated repeating the right words. You'll be defeated. Because the gate where you start from, where the critical relationship that we have got to get right is a relationship with the right priesthood. And God showed himself powerful because he was captured by the Philistines and he fought the idols of the Philistines on his own. And he broke down Dagon, and the Philistines began to become sick, and they realized that we were being fought by this particular covenant, this ark of covenant that we have here. So God could have fought in that battle. God could have fought. He wasn't captured because he was weak. He was captured because there was no priesthood in Israel that was relating with him. That was the missing link. That was the missing link. So we go to Jericho. Jericho is not even a place where Israel was going to dwell. They were just passing through. But they had to destroy Jericho. And I'm saying Jericho is that part of your destiny, the very primary part where only the priest can actually release the voice that is going to defeat that particular altar. And that altar requires the priest to release the voice of God. And as long as Jericho is standing, you can go down deep into Canaan. You will not get a victory there. This is amazing. You will not get a victory. Israel went to Ai, and they fought Ai. It was actually a smaller city. Very few people. But Jericho was still standing in their midst because they took the treasures of Jericho. And they were defeated. God said, they were amazed. How could we be defeated? Because they were looking at the walls that had fallen. And they were saying, how could we be defeated? And God said, don't even be amazed. Jericho is still standing. Someone took something from Jericho. Someone took something. So Jericho is that part that has got to be utterly destroyed before you can actually have victories in the land of Canaan. And I'm saying that defeat of Jericho must happen by the priest. Don't go deep into Canaan before you actually deal with Jericho. And dealing with Jericho, I'm telling you, requires you to be in a relationship with the priest or the priesthood. So the priest will do, number one, they will release you. Number two, they have to defeat Jericho by releasing the word of God. And you go and claim that victory. Then there's another issue about the priesthood. You've got to stay in the relationship with the priesthood. You've got to maintain that respect for the priesthood. And what do I mean? Let's look at Saul. Saul lost the kingdom simply because Saul decided, hey, he got into the intelligence that we have today. I'm just going to offer the sacrifice. After all, it's the sacrifice that matters. And God said, that was very foolish. That's what Samuel said. That was very foolish. You should have waited for me. Then your kingdom would have been established. That was the event when Saul lost the throne. Saul lost the throne. That was the event when it happened. He had a throne in the physical, but in the spirit, he had got up from his throne and left. And you can see David tried, like what Wadman said, David tried to respect Saul. He respected him, he showed him so much respect. He dared no one to touch Saul because he was saying Saul is the Lord's anointed. He tried to do all those things. But in the spirit, Saul had left his throne and he was only going to fail. He was only going to fail, and eventually he failed. And David had to take up the throne. And how did he get up from the throne? It's when he invaded the office of the priest. A relationship with a priesthood, an association with the priesthood, connects you with a covenant. It connects you with the word that God has released in that particular man of God or in that particular destiny that is going to influence your life. These are spiritual realities. These are spiritual realities. This is why even businessmen, when they get victories, they don't move away. They want to stay close and keep on, visiting their sangoma and so on. It's victories, spiritual victories. Once they are founded on a particular, spiritual foundation, they have to maintain that spiritual foundation for that victory to work. So when you get into a relationship with God, you have to maintain that relationship with the Lord for your victories to work. Otherwise, when he moves away, you can have the praise, you can have the, people look at it as, as long as you observe the business principles, you are going to succeed. Not so. Not so. If the Lord does not build, they that labor, they will labor in vain. They will labor in vain. So you've got to maintain a relationship. It's not optional. This is why God says he has given unto us gifts, apostles, prophets, pastors and teachers, evangelists, and all those things. Till we come, until we come, we're not given just for the one day that we were evangelized and then we can go and read the Bible on our own. No. Till we come into the fullness of the stature of the Christ. It's not a once-off relationship. That relationship has got to be maintained if we are going to come to the engineered ending of the full stature of the image of Christ. It's got to be there. I'll speak more on that later on, but I want to move on to the second part of my sermon. And I said I'm going to talk about destiny relationships or destiny associations, destiny defining associations. So with destiny defining associations, kind of relationships, what we are saying is God's program, or the way God deals with us, is so broad that God considers the whole spectrum of people. I spoke about my testimony of my boss and so on. Those people are what you would call, I think Pastor D has spoken of this, destiny connectors, people that connect you to your destiny. And those people, they might not be like people in the high stature like what my boss is. They might be very, very simple people. In the world, this is where the world actually then shines, because the world will skip the relationship with the past. What they will deal with is the relationship with all these people, the destiny connectors, people with influence, people with access, influencers, announcers. The world deals a lot in terms of this realm of relationships. But it's a very important realm. You remember Joseph when he was in prison. Joseph was a prisoner until the day he actually was anointed to go onto the throne, or the day when he was installed as the prime minister of Egypt. He was in prison. But there was no other way for him to come out except through a certain someone who said, I remember when we were in prison, there was this person, a Hebrew, who was able, we had a dream. And in our dreams, we couldn't understand them. But we told them the dreams, and he gave us the interpretation. In fact, I'm only back here in the throne. Do you know, Pharaoh, you once threw me into the prison, but I came out when he prophesied to me. So this was like, this man was not even really in authority. He was a servant. He was a steward of the Pharaoh, of the king. But what he did was he had an encounter, he had a story that he could tell to the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh would get interested in this Joseph because he had a problem that God had created which no one could solve. The solution is in the prison. Pharaoh has got the problem. He's in the throne. There is no relationship between them except this one destiny connect. That's the one person that Joseph had helped. So when we talk about engineering endings, I want you to realize one thing. God uses people in this whole equation. God uses people. We've seen God, how God even speaks through people when we talk about the men of God. But God uses people even in other subtle ways. There are people who are going to speak about you to certain people who carry what you want, people who carry your promotion. There are people who are going to speak about you. They probably are not in a position of influence in that particular kingdom, but they'll just say something to the king. They'll say something to the king. And Joseph was called. And Joseph actually began to be dressed. I mean, straight from the prison, he began to be dressed because someone had just whispered about his experience. You remember the widow of the Syrian, the Israelite widow, the Israelite maid to the Syrian. She just said, no, commander, there's no one who is doing all these things to you. There's a man of God in Israel who is the one who is telling people what you do in your bedchamber. Then for the Syrian, he told him, go and seek, there's a prophet, there's a man of God that you need to talk to. And his leprosy was healed. Just because someone just connected him to the man of God. If he had come on his own, he probably wouldn't have received help. But someone told him that there is a prophet in Israel who can actually help you. And the Syrian commander was helped. So you've got to realize that God is going to use people. And when we say God is going to use people, God is also going to use you when he's engineering endings for other people. How many people right now are in your path? People that you probably need to say something to someone about them to trigger a certain part of the chain that God has already engineered to lead to a particular ending. So when you're around people, when we meet like this, it's not by accident. God has brought us together for a particular purpose. There are people that there might be encounters. I can look at even Pastor D. Probably there's someone whose ending is going to depend on you just telling someone, but I know, Pastor D, you might need to talk to Pastor D concerning this issue. And that triggers a whole chain of things that's going to put him in a certain place No, God just does those things because God works through people. So number one, there are people that are supposed to speak for you. Then there are people that you are supposed to speak to. We are all in this whole chain. It's a whole complex chain that God has put together that's supposed to bring us and bring everyone to their destiny. Until John came announcing Christ as the Messiah, he was just a man. And I like John because John brings together the two things that we have already spoken about. We've spoken about my destiny defining associations. We've spoken about the priesthood. John was a priest. Until John ministered to Jesus in the office of a priest, Jesus did not attract any crowds. John actually had bigger crowds. After he ministered to him, after he baptized him, he didn't even need to use any gimmicks. People were just coming to him. People were just coming to him by the droves. After the intervention of John, after John had ministered to him in the office of a priest. And Jesus actually told John, Jesus was like, no. John was like, no, but I'm unworthy to loose the tongues of your sandal. And Jesus was saying, no, let it suffer it to be so for now. There had to be a priesthood that would release Jesus, a priest that would release, a man of God that would release Jesus and announce him to the world. So John does two things. Number one is the priest. Number two, as a prophet, he announces him to the world. And from there on, some disciples started to gather around him, and eventually crowds started to gather around Jesus. There was something on him that was released, something spiritual. He was appointed unto that from birth, but it would not manifest until we met John. Until we met John. So there are certain people that are going to announce you, destiny connectors that have to announce you. And once they release that information to certain people in influence, they've got access. They might not have authority, but they've got access. And when they speak to people that have got access, you should be ready, because at that point, the promotion has already been engineered and things are going to happen. Things are going to happen. Destiny defining relationship. There are people that are in your life right now just to prepare you. In as much as I've spoken about priests that are going to prepare you, parents, as a parent, the word of God says, train a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old enough, he shall not depart from it. As a relationship, family relationship, your role is to prepare your children for where God is taking them. So the engineering of the end for your children happens even you are a part of it and you know it. And you ought to pray about it. Being a parent is actually a spiritual activity. It's actually a spiritual activity. You've got to pray about it so that when they are old, and in the way that they should go, it's not in the way that you think they should go. If your child is supposed to be raised to be a man of God, you must train them in that direction. It would be so sad when we find, you remember the situation of Esau and Jacob. Isaac, their father, actually, he knew what God had said. He knew that the blessing belonged to Jacob. But he tried to rationalize the thing. You know what he did? He tried to play a trick. He said, I need venison. And Esau was the hunter. Esau was the hunter. That was in the bag for Esau. But Jacob and the mother had to cheat. They cheated him, and it was right. People look at that event and we are like, wow, what a crook Jacob was. Actually, the crook was their father. Because he tried to play the birthright. He tried to play the elder son to actually get the blessing when God had told him that this blessing belongs to Jacob. And he played a trick in the field where Esau was actually the expert. And God allowed him to be played at his own game. Because God engineers endings, and you cannot refute it when he has spoken. That was amazing. So as a parent, I want you to realize you are a very important cog when it comes to engineering relationships. I've said mothers are gates. You are gates and you are in incubation. You are even, possibly even, sometimes you can even be a cave of Adullam, where you hide your children and the devil cannot see what they've been called to, but they can see you and they are fighting you. They don't realize the actual calling is on your children. And you are being fought and you wonder, why am I being fought? You are the cave. You are the one that's hiding the blessing that God is bringing through your children. And then at a certain stage, then the devil realizes, no, it wasn't this parent. It was the child, but now it's too late. The child has been trained in the way that they should go. They are now mature. They are now standing. We ought to talk about parenthood. Pastor D, you said we will not talk about marriages because marriages, people know that. But I think parenthood, both spiritual and biological, we have got to speak about it. We've got to speak about it. The only parenthood that actually matters is spiritual parenthood. If you are not going to be a spiritual parent to your children, if you are not training them in the way they should go spiritual, you are wasting time. You're wasting time. God is going to frustrate whatever you have done to retrain your children another way. God is going to have to raise another parent to do what you were supposed to do and to train them, because he's going to engineer his ending for your children. But you would have lost the place that you were supposed to play. There's no detail in our life that's trivial, that's casual. There are endings being engineered. There are people that you are supposed to raise. You wonder how it is that there are people that are going to come to you that you did not give birth to, that you are not related to, that you are now having to train. It's because God is engineering endings, and it's serious business in this world. The devil knows this thing because he's in the business of ending, of destroying endings. That's what he's trying to do. People thought it was just Pharaoh's madness that he wanted to destroy the children of the Hebrews. He just hated the Hebrews. No, there was a Moses. There was a Moses, and he had to try to stop that. So that's why he was fighting all that. And God used, and you know what the sister did? She just went and put the basket in the water. And then Moses was delivered into the household of Pharaoh because he came in a basket to his daughter, and the daughter raised Moses. And the daughter raised Moses. He was raised in the house of Pharaoh, safe from all the destruction. Pharaoh didn't even know it. So there are destiny-defining relationships that we've got to realize and we've got to pray about. Whoever is supposed to speak about your business, whoever is supposed to help you to understand how your business is supposed to function. Back in the day, these days, people just, go to school and they get certificates and then they are certified that you are an engineer and so on. But back in the day, it wasn't really like that. That's why people are now saying there's a problem with our education system. We've got to change it. Back in the day, there was what you would call apprenticeship. You'd never be qualified for a job just by getting a certificate. What people will do is they'll put you under someone who can do that thing, who is an expert at that thing, and you learn from it. You find that Chinese are very, they are very strong about this. My master, grandmasters, and so on. That the whole principle there is what you call apprenticeship, that you come under someone. And after you've come under that person, then you learn from them, you take it, you receive it from them. And this is the best form of training that you can find in the world. That's why Jesus didn't just, give a Bible to his disciples and just lay hands on them and tell them to go. No. What he did was he made them disciples. Discipleship is actually apprenticeship. It's actually apprenticeship. That's how it engineers endings, because you pass on something more permanent than something that can just be passed on through just, reading a particular something and then thinking you've got it. You've got to be led through the trails. And when you are led through the trails, you then behave like the master. You are now a fully qualified, someone who now understands how it should be done. And when people see you do something, they will say, who did you learn it from? They won't say, what book did you read? They'll say, who did you learn it from? Who is your master? Who is your teacher? Who taught you this? Because they can see the end of the teacher in your work. So even as parents, that is part of our role. But even in our lives, there are people that are in your life to train you. And those people might not even be believers. But God is just using them for a particular season to get you to acquire certain skills. You know, I remember there's this verse in Ephesians. I was always asking someone, because I say to them, if God has called me, say, to have a particular business, am I going to be successful in that business if I don't go to school, like if I don't get an MBA and so on? How am I going to get it? You know, and someone said to me, no. If God has spoken something to you, then God will provide the training. And that was it for me. I understood exactly what they were saying. And when we say God provides the training, it's not that God sends you to business school. Business school you can go. There's nothing wrong with a business school. But to actually achieve what you are supposed to achieve, God has got to lead you through a process in life that trains you for the particular challenges that you are supposed to be fit for. And part of that process might involve God bringing you into contact with certain people for a certain season, for them to train you to be what you should. It might involve that. So I want you to realize that there are people in your life or in your destiny that you are interacting because they are passing something on to you in this particular time, in this particular season. So I've spoken about destiny connectors, announcers. You know, the funny thing about destiny connectors is, for example, my wife is into music. She's a musician. Some of the people that are going to connect into music or into where she's supposed to get to, they're not even experts at music. They might not even be too interested in music, but they just bump into her and they just find, oh, she's into music. But they will know someone else who's into music and they'll just say, can you talk to Key? And there will just be that door that God then uses. Then there's another special type of destiny connectors or destiny associations, which is intercessors. So the intercessors are the people that pray for you until God brings you into where you are supposed to get to. So these are the people like Anna, like Simeon, who prayed for Jesus until he was born. God revealed to them that they could not die. You know, it wasn't just about prayer. They had an office, they had an appointment for them to pray until Jesus was born. It was so important that God had to declare that even death would not overtake them until their job was done. They got old. You know, I don't know what they went through. Maybe they were through some close accidents and so on, but they could not die until Jesus had been born, and they knew that their job of intercession had been done. Intercession is a very important relationship when we talk about engineering endings. It's a very, I remember at a certain point we used to go out with my friend, and we would pray in the night. There was a place outside of Avondale. I never recalled that place until now, because now I stay close to that particular place. Like my house is close to that, so I was able to go back and see that place. But you know what we did? We would pray at that place. And one of the times when we were praying, God revealed to us something about pastors in Blawayo, Methodist pastors in Blawayo. And up to now, we've never met those pastors. And God said, these pastors are falling sick. And they don't know what it is. They just think it's something natural. But it's actually a spiritual attack that's on them. I want you to pray tonight until they are delivered from that particular challenge. And we prayed and prayed for those pastors until God then told us to say, no, yeah, it's okay now. And this is the mystery of intercession. You don't even know who is praying for you. You don't even know who is praying for you. When we ask people to do good works, to be rich in good works, to be rich in giving, to be rich in acts of kindness, the reason why we say those things is because you don't know how many intercessors you are triggering in your life by just those good works. Someone is praying for you because you gave to their church and they had, my chuma had given something, or you went to this orphanage and you gave, and someone doesn't stop praying for you just for that particular reason. You trigger intercession through giving, through good acts, through kindness. By just saying good things to people when you meet them, you trigger intercession. Why? Because intercession is very important to help you get to where you're supposed to get to. You need someone to pray for you to get to where you are supposed to get to. I'm going to stop there today because I think I've run out of my time. I wanted to get to 1 o'clock. The last form of relationship that I'm just going to mention in passing is just, general associations. And general associations is where you just come across the whole mass of people. They are not even close to you. They don't even have personal access to you, but there's just, just like you've got the Chumas, and my Chuma is a relationship is a relative of all the people Chumas. And then, I'm a HOVE, I'm a relative of all the people HOVE, and so on. That particular background, or I'm a Zimbabwean, or I'm a South African, that particular background already carries with it a particular association. That association has got all things positive and negative. It's got, even when you talk of familiar spirits, they also come under that. When you talk of territorial spirits, they come under that sort of, that particular sort of relationship. And you've got to understand these things because they are both positive and negative things that are around those particular relationships. And as you pray intelligently, you've got to understand what it is that those relationships bring in your life. There's a particular way I think, because I was raised in Zimbabwe. When I'm now working among people in South Africa, I have to unlearn some things so that I can understand where they come from. I find it difficult just to, relate with them naturally because I'm from Zimbabwe. We've probably got the same qualifications, but because of where I come from, I have to struggle to understand them. It takes me a bit of time to actually then form a working relationship and to be able to understand how they think and how they actually do their things. General associations, they influence how you are going to arrive at your particular destiny. What I want you to know is this. Your general associations, when you talk about limitations, they are not going to stop what you are supposed to achieve. They can't stop it. But I want you to know that it takes the power of the Holy Ghost. It takes the working of God for you to achieve what you are supposed to achieve. Because they bring, general associations have got certain limitations that they bring in your life that you have to overcome. And they also bring some advantages. Pharaoh, it was necessary for Moses to be raised in the house of Pharaoh, not just to protect him, but to train him in certain things that he needed when he would lead Israel out of Egypt. It was necessary. It was something that God had to use when he was going to bring him into what. You might be surrounded by relatives that you wonder, why was I even born into this family? I'm telling you, no matter how difficult that family is, there are things around that family, around that background, that God will use. There are things that God will use. In the same way, there are some negative things that you have to overcome in your relationship. You just need to trust God. You need to understand and you need to trust God. But understand that when we are talking about engineering relationships, there is nothing casual in your life. In future editions, I think we'll cover the issue of doing away with certain relationships, because we're not talking about you being passive and just accepting everyone as part of you, as part of the plan of God. There are relationships that God tells you to actually break off, and you've got to break those off. Today, I'm not going to cover on that. I think Pastor D will probably cover that in future sermons and in future meetings. But I want you to just know that it's not all negative, and it's not all the negative that you cannot overcome. The word says the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not comprehend it. The darkness can't overcome it. When the light shines, it doesn't matter what associations have come in your background. I told you that if you don't train your child, because God is a God who engineers endings, he is going to raise someone else to train them. It's the same thing. It's the same principle. If your background, your general associations are not working for you the way they should, then God is going to. That's why some people, you've had to be taken out of Zimbabwe into South Africa, into the UK. We've got our brother who was in Egypt at some point, because God is raising him up for certain endings. That's why God does some of those things. I've got some friends who God actually connected them with people like Pastor Chris, and there were things that God had to do, and he had to take them from Zimbabwe and he had to send them to Nigeria. And he spent like 10 years in Nigeria. He just made a phone call and just said, he just made an email, like he sent an email and just said, I had a dream, I could see you, you were teaching me things, and so on. And when people saw that message at Christ Embassy, they quickly forwarded it to Pastor Chris. And when Pastor Chris saw it, he immediately sent a ticket and brought the guy from Maronde to Nigeria. And he spent some years. Now he's in Namibia. It's not even in Zimbabwe, because of what God has called him to do. And God is raising him for those things. I'm telling you, when we are talking about engineering relationships, this thing is bigger than you can imagine. This thing is bigger than you can imagine. It's amazing. This place that we are, where we fellowship, 8 people on the call, I'm telling you, God can raise. I have seen the power of God in this ministry. If God wanted those huge numbers that we all crave for, he can easily have them in a year. He can easily have them. But there is a certain advantage that we are enjoying by just being the 8 of us like this. I'm telling you, there's a big advantage. I might not have a certain access to a person like Mai Chuma or Mbuku when God has raised them, that I have got now. And if I take advantage of this time that I'm relating to them, when they get to where God is raising them, like if Pastor D were to have this ministry which has got, thousands and thousands of people, there will be protocol to get to him that you don't have now. There will be protocol. You really have to fight among many people to actually get access to him or to get access to him. People like Key, you've heard so many words, God speaking to you about your music and so on. There might be a stage where it might be difficult to now reach you, but only because we have had this relationship on this platform, you'll be able to just send them a WhatsApp message. Believe me, this is true. There are people who write, I manage those platforms. People send so many messages to her. I want to call you. I'm like, who are you? Who are you to call him? But anyone here can just call him. Because God is bringing you close to people whose endings he has engineered for your benefit. Someday you'll be able to say, oh, Ninga, I can actually just call that person. Because the ending has now been engineered. God has created a network that he can use for you to actually achieve your destiny or what he has set before your life. I'm going to hand back to the men of God. Just remember what I've said. We start at the priesthood when we talk about relationships. This is not an optional one where you can choose to have it or not, and then you can chase all the other relationships. And this priesthood relationship is going to bring down Jericho for you, if it hasn't already. And when it brings down Jericho, only then can you then proceed further down into the land and conquer all the other things. Then we spoke about associations that define destiny. I just spoke about 3 types of associations, maybe 4. Announcers, people that announce you, destiny helpers. Then I spoke about intercessors as well. So those people they might be ministers, they need not to be. They can be people around you in your social circles, wherever it's in your craft, in your art, in business, you can find all those people. Pray for those people. Pray that they will connect you. Pray that they will save the road that God has told them to save. And pray that you'll be discerning. Because sometimes if you meet those people and you don't understand what God has done through them. For example, if Elijah hadn't gone with a word from the Lord, that widow had been commanded to feed him, he might not have been persistent to get that miracle where she was able to provide for them and the bread basket didn't even run out. He was persistent because he had a word. They might not know. Your connectors might not even know their role. But if you are persistent because you know, my boss, I probably would have quit that relationship if God hadn't spoken to me and said, I have a place for you. I would have said I have no right to be abused like this and just quit. But because I knew, what I did was go back and pray. I went back and prayed and said, Lord, this is now going it's now going haywire. What's happening? And God said, no, I've spoken to him. Remain there. And so many times God has spoken to me like that. So many times. Some of you are surrounded by difficult people. But if it's a season for you to be with those people, I want you to know that if you know the word of the Lord, that you are supposed to be there, hold on. Hold on. The ending is being engineered. When it's time for you to leave that place, you will leave it. The last one, I spoke about general associations. General associations, I just spoke about the general people that you are around and so on. I didn't speak about the people that you are supposed to get away from. There's a lot in that. I think we'll cover that in future meetings. You remember when God said, drive out all the inhabitants of that land. God was touching on a principle of association that he wanted these people to know. He wasn't just talking about physical, relationships. He wasn't just talking about, these Gentile nations being seated next to Israel, and it's a bad thing. No, he wasn't just talking about that. He was talking about a spiritual atmosphere that associations carry. And that spiritual atmosphere might actually fight against your destiny. That is where you've got to separate from people. We'll cover that in future meetings. I'll hand it over back to Pastor D. Thank you, Pastor D, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, man of God. That was relevant. I hope everybody here has actually benefited from what has been said here, especially on my side, the part of parenthood. That was too deep. I think you need to come back and actually expound more on that, because we are actually paying a blinded eye on that. And we need clarity and guidance on how to actually navigate our way out of that space. All right. So thank you so much, man of God. That was deep. That was deep. I still have a lot of notes that I wrote down that I still need to go down and open my Bible as well and study and see some of the things that I might have missed. Because each and every time when God ministers like this, the reason why I said this sermon, I don't really want to speak about it alone. The reason why I'm trying to do that is because we are coming from different faculties of life. And if you are going to give me that platform, I'm going to be spiritual, because that's my point of call. All right. But if we are going to bring others in, we are going to have a balanced diet of everything that we need in the world. All right. So this was actually a relevant word. It was actually powerful. Thank you so much for allowing God to use you. May the Lord bless you guys. I don't have anything else to actually add on there. I will be posting this video on my YouTube later on, so that if you missed anything, you can still go back and rewatch it and get the nuggets that were being spoken on this platform. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. Thank you all for signing on and staying up to this moment in Jesus' mighty name. Let's meet again next week as we get to part 3 of engineered endings. God bless you.